Would you like to introduce yourselves to the viewers of Positive TV?
Surely. I'm Brian Hubbard, and I'm the publisher and co-editor of What Doctors Don't Tell You.
And I'm Lynne McTaggart. I'm editorial director of What Doctors Don't Tell You, and an author besides.
And also, I believe, journalists. Is that right?
Yes, it's not a profession people would like to admit to these days, but we're still quite proud to say we are journalists because we believe it can be and should be an important profession. And we've obviously seen standards drop over the last few years, but between us we have something of 80 years journalistic experience between us, and Lynne has been a lecturer in journalism herself.
Tell us more about your journalistic career, briefly.
I was trained, I attended the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University, which is one of the most prestigious universities for journalism in the country, in America. I also started life as an investigative reporter, working for the Chicago Tribune New York News Syndicate. I broke national stories that were lauded about trafficking in babies. I testified before congressional committees. I got awards for stuff like that. I did all kinds of undercover reporting. Nevertheless, I always felt, even when I was writing about, what would seem to be the dodgiest of characters, that they had the right of reply, and I had the obligation to be careful in the way that I characterized them, to make sure that I was being fair.
Okay. I mean, I guess you don't get awards in journalism for being slack, for not checking your sources, for instance.
Yeah. No.
It kind of brings us to why we're here today, and the recent, it appears, attack that has been published in the Times. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that and get your feedback about it. And so the Times said that you said, personally, that vitamin C cures HIV. Is there any truth in that?
Absolutely not. It's a complete falsehood. What we did do was simply report on a study carried out by a Dr. Robert Cathcart showing that that HIV responded to vitamin C. We never claimed it was a cure.
Okay. The Times also mentions that it would be a bad idea, that you suggest that it would be a bad idea for parents to have their children immunised with the MMR vaccine.
Mm. Well, we've been talking about the MMR since the day we launched in 1989, and in all those years we have never, ever told anybody to do or not do anything. That is not our function.
Okay.
Our job is to provide hard-to-get information so people can make up their own informed minds about things. Because frankly, when it comes to vaccinations, the government isn't telling people everything. Nonetheless, we would never ever tell anyone to do or not do anything. And this story actually comes from a report we did on a doctor, Dr. Jane Donegan, who herself has investigated the MMR and has concluded that the Department of Health has been very loose and fast with the facts, and that indeed, now she's evaluated the whole thing, she believes that parents should not vaccinate their child.
Okay, so it wasn't just the MMR vaccine that you've done research work with. There's also the Gardasil vaccine as well. The Times kind of implied that you had said that the cervical cancer vaccine has killed hundreds of girls. Did you say that?
We didn't. What we did do is report on the evidence. First of all, the number reported by the American Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which is a government set-up situation where people and doctors can report side effects of vaccines. And theirs has reported 68 deaths associated with Gardasil and the HPV vaccine. There's also a charity that was set up by the mother of one of the girls who died following administration of this vaccine. And she has logged in more than 100 other children who have been allegedly died after having this vaccine. And she's been in contact with the parents, has pictures, has information, etc., and that's logged on the site. Plus, we reported on the fact that VAERS, the reporting system of America, is notorious for underreporting. Only about 10% of actual side effects of vaccines get reported on that site. So that's what we reported. No other implication.
So, just to clarify again, what you're saying is that you have been republishing other people's work here.
Yes, we're reporters.
Reporting
we're simply
other people's work.
reporting information, and what the Times has misunderstood is they have misrepresented us as claiming cures for things when we're simply reporting on evidence and scientific studies and providing, as Bryan says, hard to get information.
So you didn't suggest, for instance, that homeopathy could cure cancer, as the Times mentioned?
No, I mean this is the most wonderful one of all, because we haven't even done the study yet. We haven't reported. It's in next month's issue. What he was referring to was a very short column at the back of the current magazine, which said next month we'll be looking at homeopathy as a treatment for cancer, which is actually quite interesting, because the America's own National Cancer Institute was so intrigued by the success that clinics in India were achieving, that they actually then investigated further, and they looked at cancer cell lines under laboratory conditions, and then put homeopathic nosodes into those cell lines, and discovered that the cancer cells had been obliterated by the homeopathy. Now that was interesting, so therefore we feel, as a matter of duty, we should report on that, because I think people ought to know. Are we saying therefore it's a cure for cancer? No. Are we saying that people should therefore immediately drop the chemo and have homeopathy? No. But isn't it interesting?
And the real point is, that for all of the pink ribbons and prettily turned phrases, cancer treatments, conventional cancer treatments, work only 12% of the time. Chemotherapy, when you strip out all of the false reporting about it, actually works only 2% of the time. We're losing the war on cancer. It's really important for journalists like us to investigate any areas that do show any promise whatsoever. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're providing people with information. We're not telling them what to do.
It would be useful, of course, if the people who are reading this information actually understood it evidently, because clearly you've been misquoted several times. You're not generating this research yourself, you're just relaying the research of other people.
Yes, and it's all from very reputable institutes, from Oxford, from Harvard, from Yale, and the American Cancer Institute. These people are really looking at this stuff, and I suppose fundamentally there is this enormous schism between what the research people are doing and what actually is practiced in the field. And that gap is getting wider and wider. And that's what we're actually reporting on.
Okay. So it seems that the journalist from the Times has not done his work particularly thoroughly, but unfortunately there seems to be a bit of a media circus that's been drummed up by this. Can you tell us what happened after the Times published their badly researched article?
Yeah. Well, in the first place, the Times never contacted us for any comment at all, and just went ahead with this piece, which effectively was an opinion piece.
It's nice to know they bought your magazine, though.
Well, yes.
I don't think they did, actually. I don't think they did. Well, it doesn't look like they read it.
I think that's been a lot of the problem, because by 9 a.m. that morning, there was a television show on saying how awful we were and how we were the very seed of the devil.
Who was that?
That was The Right Stuff on Channel 5, and they were pushing pictures of Lynne up. We knew nothing about this. We were not invited on the show, but nonetheless it was a trial without the suspect being present. This was followed up by a hysterical radio show where we were described as fairy dust or something of the sort. Again, we were not invited on the show, and subsequently there have been other hysterical outbursts.
However, it's now turning. One of those in the Press Gazette has been retracted, and there are other, we are reporting about what's wrong with the reports, and we're demanding rights of reply. But more than that, this is being picked up and going viral all over the place. And people are they're canceling the Times, they're canceling the Guardian, who's also running material about that, and mostly they're revealing that the actual source of this story is Simon Singh and Sense About Science, which is a pharmaceutically backed organization. It is sponsored by the British Pharmaceutical Association, the very industry that we're attacking. So the real story here is that the Times has allowed itself to be, and these other organizations have allowed themselves to be the patsies of an industry-backed organization to attack a paper, a magazine that is responsibly and critically examining that industry. Now that used to be the job of the Times and television and those other radio shows, and they have turned into, they've turned into poachers themselves. They're supposed to be the ones being guardians of the public interest, the fourth estate. And sadly, as I wrote in a blog of mine, it used to be the case that they would be reporting on things like a corrupt presidency, like Nixon. They've become the Nixon of the peace.
Can I just ask you, are you backed by any organisations?
No. I mean, no, we rely entirely for our survival on readers and members, subscribers, and obviously to an extent advertisers. We mention products in the magazine. We take not a penny. We don't get any commissions. There's no kickback. There's no affiliation. We just think our work is good enough and should sell on its own merits.
Okay. So this website, Sense About Science, run by a gentleman called Simon Singh, they actually are backed by the British Pharmaceutical Association.
Society.
Sorry.
They well, in partly funded by them and by other corporates, other pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so they are a lobby group there to protect the interests of so-called big science, I suppose.
A lobby group, as in they would be able to have access to newspapers, I dare say?
Yes, they do.
Talk to reporters?
They do, of course.
Okay.
Their job is to keep the journalists on the straight and narrow, effectively, and to toe the line.
Yes. It depends on your view of the straight and narrow, I guess, doesn't it?
It does rather, I'm afraid, but that's the function of Sense About. And of course, we rather upset that natural order, unfortunately.
Is this going to change anything that you do?
Well, we're getting an incredible amount of support. I mean, there's been an enormous flooding of interest in the publication. There's been more and more support all over Facebook and the internet. And no, we expect that part of our job is to upset the status quo. That's what we're doing. We're saying what doctors don't tell you. We're attacking the pharmaceutical industry, one of the largest and most powerful industries in the world. We wouldn't be doing our job well if we didn't get this kind of blowback. The point is, though, I think that what the public have to understand is that a lot of information in the press about these new treatments and about the dangers of conventional medicine are being suppressed. And that's where we come in. We're making that private conversation public.
Okay, so I think it would be useful just to go back and say a little bit more about your publication, about your website. People who are interested in alternative therapy or let's say not drug-based therapy, can have a look on your site and buy your magazine to get further information, can they? Is that the idea?
That's the idea, and the site is www.wddty.com, and they can subscribe from there as well and get the magazine delivered to their home, just in case the shops aren't selling it.
And we also have available to them at very low cost all 24 years of our research. They can search our database, and there's 24 years worth of information about just about every illness and how to use drug-based, non-drug-based approaches and what the evidence is for them, pro or con.
Bryan and Lynne, thank you very much for speaking to Positive TV.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay.